everyone. Today we got to play Trains. And we're very fortunate to have the Gen Con expansion. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because board games are amazing and that's what we do here. Robert, tell us more about Trains.
So this actually, the base game of Trains came out quite a while ago. It's 2012. It's a pretty good rating, 7.2 overall rank, and Board Game Geek is 542. Designed by the awesome Hisashi Hayashi. He's made a couple of my favorite games. He's awesome. Art by Ryo Niyamo, if I pronounce that properly. Published by Okazu in AEG, which is how we got it. It was through AEG. MSRP is $58.99, but you get it much cheaper. Card House has got it at $38.99. I saw Geek Market for $25, so you can get it much cheaper. But just know there is several expansions and expansion maps as well, so it could drive the cost up a little bit if you want to try and go all out on it. But there's at least Rising Sun is a big box. There's other smaller one that we got the rulebook for, the market or something like that. Can't remember the name of it. But then quite a few map expansions. It didn't really add cards. It just adds different ways of playing the game.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's talk about quality of pieces. So obviously this is a deck builder. So deck is really, really big in this. So cards are, there's no linen finish. Okay thickness, very shiny, out of the sleeves. It is a deck builder, so
you need to sleeve the cards.
You do need to sleeve the cards. There is a lot of shuffling. As far as your trains, they're cubes. Yeah, they're really generic.
They represent tracks.
They're supposed to represent tracks, and they're cubes. Just a cube. Yeah.
And then you've got so these are the stations, which again, lame. So quality of pieces, it's not so great for me on this. What are you guys giving it?
For quality pieces, a 4.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that out loud until someone else agreed with me.
And I like this game. We'll talk about why I like this game later. But just overall quality pieces, there's not that many. And I mean, the card quality could be better. The pieces could be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine if it's a card game. So if they put the money in the cards, fine. But they didn't do that.
Right.
So
I'm going to be a little more generous and give it a 5. I think when I think Catan being our 5, this comes with a board, which is a step up from Catan.
But the modular pieces of Catan look better.
Well, I agree. You get houses, but they're very generic houses, very much Monopoly-esque. So I don't think that the wood bits are any really.
They're all. It's supposed to be a track. Why not at least get the roads that you have in Catan? You know those are basic
because
pieces.
You're doing a hex-based movement on the board is the reason.
Yeah, but you could screen printed track on the cubes.
Do something.
Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is the amazing piece. Right. I'm saying I can't see you giving it less than Catan.
I understand, but I think it's a little less than Catan.
I agree. I'm at a 4.
So I might do 4.5 because it's not that much worse. But
right. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
All right. So then let's talk about themes. So this is a Trains themed game. The cards do have some trains on them. The cubes really break you away from the fact that this is drinking train. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, thematically, it's very pasted on.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Well, any form of transportation.
Yeah, any form of transportation. It doesn't have to be trains. It's just the artwork is very nice on the cards. I think the artwork for the train themselves, they look really cool. The different card abilities, although there's not. Once you pick a stack of cards, the artwork for that stack is the same, but the artwork in of itself is still very good. So thematically, it's the artwork. It's not truly.
I personally think it's the fact that you have diverse locations, and just by switching out a map or a board, you have a different style of gameplay. It's not hugely different, but
it changes the strategy a little bit.
And and being from the area that's in there, we generally play the Gen Con board.
Oh yeah, because for sure. Just because we know.
Cool, and it's like, I know that city, and I know that city, and some of them are not geographically quite correct as far as where they are, but
it's still
fun.
Cool.
Well, it's just like there's mountains north of Louisville.
Well, it's a mountainous region, but it's actually, I guess, what we call our knobs here, which is really hills. But there's if you know anything about Indiana, glaciers basically formed most of this area. And
It's pretty flat.
It's pretty flat. There's no, if you drive up here, it's corn, exit.
Hey, windmills.
Corn.
We have a few
Well, I
windmills.
mean,
That's way north, though.
It just depends on what side of the state you're on. You go through Brown County, it's very hilly. Down here in the south, it's pretty hilly. But, there's a huge stretch of the state that's pretty flat.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. All right. So theme-wise, though, not very heavy. I'm at a 5 for theme. It's there. It exists.
I think it's better now. I think the artwork really lends a lot to the theme for me. I really like it. I again, like Randy said, I like the different locations on the Gen Con map, but even on the other maps, it's still kind of cool seeing all the different locations. I got a Bay Area map that's pretty neat. So I'm gonna go low. I'm more of a 7.
Okay. What about you?
I'm gonna split the difference. I think it's more of a 6 to me. It's slightly better than Catan. It's a little more colorful. It's a little more vibrant, and the locations, are just calling out. I mean, heck, they got the Gen Con logo.
You could go to Gary.
Yeah, you can.
That's
go to
the only
Gary.
reason you would ever go to Gary is in this game.
No,
but...
if you're going to buy steel. But I mean, there's if you're familiar with any of the locations on any of the maps, it's pertinent. But obviously, it's not going to hit everybody.
But what's the likelihood of them being able to find the Gen Con 2013 map?
It'd be pretty tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that little caveat there. Is part of what you enjoy, man. I don't think other people are going to be able to find this.
I think Trains as a general is out of print, right?
Yeah, I think so.
There's still stock in some of the stores. So getting any of the promo stuff.
Yeah, but they're not making any new stuff for it. They haven't for some time.
All right, so let's talk about rules.
All right, so the rule book is there's the one that comes with the base train set is 12 pages long. Then there's the Rising Sun expansion, which has another 12-page long rule book. So 2 of those. There's a mini expansion that's the Coastal Tides expansion.
Yeah, Coastal Tides.
And that one is only 4 pages long, but it's really just basically a map and some route, some variant rules expansion for it. It's not a lot of detail.
That's the only thing I don't have for it. I don't have that destination, the coastal destination stuff.
So the rulebook is very open. You got a lot of blank space and real estate on the pages. It's that way all through. And I like that to some extent, but it takes up a lot of unnecessary space in your box. They could probably condense this to make it a lot shorter of a rulebook.
And the rulebook is I think it almost feels oversized because of all that space.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think they could have crammed it and probably got it into a 10-page rulebook. I don't know if they could go any less, but the font is really good. It's easy on the eyes. You don't have to strain to read it. The rules are very well laid out in the game, and it's pretty intuitive from the cards. The only confusion we had was just remembering it, which is all in the back,
costs.
The reference sheet, the costs, but it's really right there. And you don't. I would say this is probably sufficient, except for the fact that it takes up so much real estate on your table. It'd be nice if this were on a card that was smaller, so everybody could use it. But it's probably probably don't need 4 or 5 copies of it. It's probably sufficient to have it just on one spot. But just the only problem with it is that your table does need extra space for this big rule book. But we really didn't have to reference into the rule book during the gameplay.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't. I gotta admit, I had to ask a lot of questions about what was the cost of this, what is the cost of that. So I would have liked that cheat sheet a little bit closer at hand versus having to be like.
But Ray and I got quite a bit of experience with this game too, though. So there's that too.
Then why don't y'all have the rule book? Why do they?
Because we haven't played it in a long time.
Right.
I mean, we played this a lot back in 2012, 2013 era. And then
games have advanced a little bit.
Yeah, it did feel a little dated, but we'll get to that more in the gameplay. As far as the rulebook goes, I'm going to probably go ahead and give this a 7.5, I think. It's fine. I think it's got some excess space, and I think the size of it, especially since it's got the reference sheet, could have been smaller. It would have been more useful.
I'm going to go a little bit higher because I do own this game. I like it quite a bit myself. So I'm going to give it an 8 just because it's so easy to read.
It is.
And so I think it's so well laid out and so well written that it even though there is a lot of wasted space and they could have shortened it, it's still a very good rule book. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about gameplay. So gameplay in the sense that you start out with a 10 deck or a 10 card deck. You obviously shuffle
And throw them on the floor.
Well, hey, that's what I do. So you shuffle them, and you're going to take up 5 in your hand. Luckily, I got a little bit of everything in this. Okay, so in the cards, at least starting out, you have your trains. Now, your trains can basically, those are your income. So basically, they're running around getting you money, and if you'll notice, the coin that you get when you play the train is up here in this corner, right? So it's a little gold medallion. And you see on this other end, that's actually the cost. So we'll talk about the cost here a little bit when we talk about purchasing goods. Okay. So then the other things, so we've got 2 other cards here. We have lay rails, right? So you're going to lay a rail. So that's taking a cube and actually placing it on the board. Now, when you do that, you also have to pay additional costs based on the location that you're doing it. Like if you're building it into a city, there's some costs there. If you're building in a place there's other people at, if you're building it over difficult terrain, that will all add to the cost. That's why the back of the sheet's so important to give you those reminders. And then you take a waste. So waste is...
I didn't lay the waste cards out.
So the waste is essentially a filler in your hand. Very, very annoying. You can choose to skip your turn and remove all the waste. So that's your action. Like you can't play any cards. You just remove all the waste out of your hand. So if you
that's
have
one way. There are card abilities that can do it as well.
Yeah, if you pick them out. We didn't do any.
We didn't do that.
Now there was one card that allows you to discard a pair and draw 3 more cards.
Yeah.
So that was very useful getting when you had 2 waste. 1 wasn't worth like losing your hand. 2 that could have been worth it, but instead you got to discard them. So that was nice. So
or draw 3 more waste like I did.
Well, hey, each to each his own. You should probably have emptied out your hand a little bit better. And then the next one is the station. So the station doesn't cost any to play, but you do, but when you build on the place that has a station, it costs more to build there. And these stations are the multiplier in the game. So they're actually very important to build. Like if you are... like, for example, I'm in Lafayette. I don't get any points for that because there's no stations. However, if I was in Speedway, I would get 2 points for being there because there's one station there.
The first one's worth 2. The second one, if you have 2, is a total of 4 for the city. And if you have 3, it's worth 8.
And even though it's more expensive to build in it, this kind of a little bit of the strategies is do you build this because it means other people can score there as well. And so, again, the cost of building into it when someone else in there is more expensive, but it's victory points.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of have to balance that. And also that's why I almost liked, like you guys were building on this side. So I got to kind of get free reign here, but then I tapped in on your biggest city on here real quick to get those 8 points,
I didn't like that at all.
Which was very helpful for me. And there was a card that was available to get rid of that. So then I have 3 money to purchase a card. So this is very similar to your other deck builders. I have 3 money to now purchase off the board. Now, there are victory point options. There is one I could spend 3 to get
1 victory point.
1 victory point if I wanted to. It's early in the game. I don't necessarily want to do that this early because, again, that fills my hand.
It gives you 2 cards its way. Yeah. You get that as a victory point, which you can't do anything with, plus a waste.
Right. So you end up kind of you don't want these kind of early on.
Right.
But there's other cards that allow you to do special different stuff, unlike we talked about. So just depending on the card, you're going to read that text and follow through the text. Most of those are pretty straightforward. If you do have questions, you can look in the rule book. So that's pretty straightforward. And obviously the end of the game is when someone runs out of train tracks, which I did in this last game.
Or if 3 of these stacks of 8,
4.
Or is it 4?
4 of those stacks.
4 of the stacks empties out.
I didn't see that happening.
I believe there's a condition when all of these run out as well.
I think so too. If there's no
any of
stations.
those 3 conditions are met. When no stations are available, when someone's burned through all their tracks, or when any 4 of the stacks, apart from the waste,
yeah, and so
burned through.
So the victory points really are mainly where your stations are located with your railroads, along with these end of game victory points for their cards. Now there are some cards that allow you, like the one that we played with, that I wish I would have thought about taking advantage of, was the spending 4 money to gain a victory point. You could have set up your hand where you didn't mess with any of the train tracks or do any of that, and just focused on high-paying trains, spending money to
gain
gain
a lot of money, so that then you just buy victory points.
Yeah, so there was a way to go about that. So I liked the fact that, hey, look, there was another way to go about this.
Yeah.
So depending on the cards that are in play, that's a card not necessarily you'll get every single time, but there may be other strategies that you may actually, we jumped in and I didn't really look at the cards.
Yeah.
And if I had, I would have been like, oh, well, I'm not going to put any waste in my hand. I'm not going to worry about those. I'm just going to fill it up with money and things. And that could have been very beneficial.
I will say I appreciate that this was one of the earlier deck builders that took advantage of doing something with a board.
Right.
Most of the deck builders in this era were just like Dominion clones, or you had at this time Resident Evil deck builder came out, where you at least added on going into the dungeon, and then you had Thunderstone that was also by AEG, where you had a built-in dungeon that you went in and fought monsters in. So they started already venturing away from a pure deck builder type of game. This one, I think, if you take the board out of the picture, it is basically Dominion. It is the same concepts, everything about it.
And same as for card mechanics. You got money cards, you got victory point cards, and you got action cards.
And you have waste, which is in essence curses, except for there's no negative victory point ability. And that's actually one of my grievances about the game, because I feel like at the end of the game it should have a negative victory point.
No, I had way too many of them.
It's the reason I think it should. No, I think hand management is important to the game, but I think it should have been more important. That's really my only grievance about this game, is because I think it would have been more strategic had they had placed a negative penalty on those.
No, I mean, I think it plays very differently.
My only grievance with the game is the same one with Dominion. If you get a bad randomized cards out there, it could be a very boring game. But if you get some good combos going with the different cards, the different train cards, or the different station type cards, because you got cards that break rules of the game, and some of them are really cool. And so if you get some good combos, it's a whole lot more fun. And so and people will make them themes. So they got different. I suggest these 8 cards, which add a different thematic feel to it, versus this other guy's. Well, do these 8 and it does a different feel. Those are kind of neat to play as well. But if you do just straight randomizer, you could get some bad cards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some that when I was looking at them, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Why would I pick that up? I have no idea why I would do that.
And I think all of them have use if they're comboed with other cards.
Right, exactly.
And so if you get that bad randomizer, they're like, man, this kind of sucks. And
it almost wish it was like a random scenario.
But Dominion is the same way. You might have some bad random pulls for the decks, and then they're like 2 of them you may never touch.
Yeah, you might have that, or you just may have a slow burn game, where it's just, it drags. But so I always appreciate Dominion because of the fact that you get the decks out there and you have to quickly form a strategy on how you're going to buy up everything. And obviously you're going to have some luck in the mix of what cards you get in your hand and whether it's going to allow you to buy what you want in your strategy. But Dominion is one of the few games I've played tournament-wise. I didn't play it heavily, but I played it and made it for a couple rounds into the tournament at Gen Con. And I like the fact that you can sit down and play with people and you see the different strategies just come out. And it's got to be, I assess my 10 sets of cards out there and figure out what am I going to do with that. This is one that's similar in that nature, although I didn't assess it nearly as well as I should have during the gameplay because I didn't realize.
You missed Viaduct.
Well, it was there, but I didn't know what it did. And the fact that it was so abusive to the strategy I was playing, which was trying to build up a city to make it so it was prohibitive.
I was totally fine with that.
For you guys to come into it, and I stayed away from all of the distant locations that are worth the most victory points, whereas you guys both kind of cornered the market on those. My strategy that would have paid out if that card had not been there completely collapsed, and I was a very distant third in the game. So I think that's more a fault of me not knowing the card and how it played, and not taking the time to assess the cards that were out there to figure out what my strategy was up front.
I think we kind of, it was getting kind of late for me, and I was like, all right, we gotta jump in. Mm-hmm. It was 9. By the time I came back down, it was 9. But yes, it was early for me.
So just caveat. We got a game out. She picked it out, wanted to play it. It will be coming up as another review here.
We learned it. She fell asleep while we were learning it.
With Sarah in my lap.
With our daughter. And then whenever we got ready to play, she was asleep, so we played without her.
And played almost the whole game while her and Sarah slept.
During the game, she woke up at some point, got Sarah to go to bed for Christmas, as she should, and then Miranda's proceeded to go on to bed as well. We finished the game, we put it up, we got another game out to play that was a 2-player because everyone else was done for the night. And what happens, I go upstairs and Miranda's like, okay, I'm awake now, I'm ready to play a game. So
we play trains.
We play trains because Robert had already got the game out and started to learn the 2-player game, set it up with everything, and we're like, no, put it away, get this out.
I'm sorry. You said it was okay.
But you wanted to make sure we played something that was easy to learn and we already knew how to play. So we got trains.
Did do that.
Trains fit that bill perfectly.
Well, because if you would have had to learn the rules for something else, I would have been asleep.
You would have been asleep again, yeah. So this is what we go through every night. So all in all, I think trains, it hasn't held up over time as well as I remember it fondly back in the day. I think that deck builders have come a long way since here as far as more functionality, more gameplay beyond just a typical deck builder. I still have fun playing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good game. I would call it a light deck builder now.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward, easy to figure out the card combinations. You don't have a whole lot of cards to begin with, so it's not too difficult to figure those out fairly quickly and just build a strategy and you run with it.
If you enjoy Dominion, but you kind of miss having the board or an interaction on a board.
Yeah, this is a good slight evolution in the genre.
Yeah,
so.
I think I'm going to, being that there's variability if you've got the expansion, variability if you've got the different boards.
Right.
I'll give it a 7, but it's very light 7. I think is where I'm at. I like Dominion, even though it doesn't even have the board, has way more variability with so many more decks. I like it a lot more.
I'm going to go more off nostalgia. I had a lot of fun playing this game when we first got it many years ago, and it's that fondness that I remember that I'm giving it an 8. But that's the only reason. I agree as far as everything else with Randy. I think realistically it's a 7 game, but the nostalgia bumps it up some point.
So I'm coming from this perspective of no nostalgia, never playing this before. There are other deck builders that are so much better than this, and that include the board that, I understand it's in our collection. I understand there's nostalgia, but would I go seek this out? I don't know if I would. I do think it's okay, but I like the theme better with Dominion. Like, if you're like, oh, let's play this or Dominion, I'd be like, let's play Dominion. There's more variability. I like it better. So for me, that's where I'm kind of at, is like, I don't have any of that nostalgia to come with it. And there are other deck builders that include board work and stuff like that that I would rather play.
Thunderstone.
There's so many other stuff out there right now, and I do think it does feel aged for the time, aged now because of just where it's at as far as gameplay. I'm probably at a 6.5. That's probably where I'm at. So, but I don't have any of that nostalgia to bump it up. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast today, and hopefully you'll come and hang out with us again to play some other games. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.